Welcome back. Now we will complete lecture 1.2, adding and subtracting real numbers. You've had some experience with this in 6th and 7th grade, and we're going to continue this process in 8th grade Algebra 1. All right, to add numbers, we need to know that real numbers are all the numbers on a number line. Adding numbers with the same sign, you just add their absolute values and keep the sign. So if you're adding two positives, your sum is positive. If you're adding two negatives, your sum is negative. If you're adding numbers with different signs, this is where it gets a little more complicated. You have to find the difference of their absolute values and use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. For instance, the absolute value of -8 is 8. That's 8 units from 0 on a number line. The absolute value of 12 is 12. So right now, the larger absolute value was the positive number. That's why my final answer is positive, because I do 12 minus 8, it's 4, and it stays positive. For the second example, the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of -15 is 15. The larger absolute value is the negative number in this case. So when I do 15 minus 3 to get 12, the sign has to stay the larger absolute value. It stays with the negative. There are other ways to demonstrate this. You may have used a number line. For instance, to demonstrate -2 plus -9, you would start at -2 and go left 9 more spots until you land at -11. For these, you could start at -8 and go right 12. What do you do? 12. You'd end at 4, and so on. Whether you use a number line or not, you just need to know the rules. I'm adding two negatives, so I add 5 and 7 to get 12 and keep it negative. For 2, I'm adding two negatives, so I keep it negative and add the two numbers, it's -34. When you have different signs, that's when you subtract. So 68 minus 52 is 16. The larger absolute value would have been the 68, so it has to stay negative. I don't worry about the negative until the very end. And visualize this. If you were at positive 52 on the number line, you went left 68, you're way past 0 in the negative land. Two numbers are opposites if their sum is 0. A number and its opposite are the same distance from 0 and have the same absolute value. So to subtract a number and add its opposite and follow the rules for addition. Some of you just see that 3 minus 8 is going to be -5. Others, you need to rewrite it as 3 plus -8 equals -5. Either way you go, you're starting at positive 3, going left 8, and you're landing at -5. Another way to memorize this or think about it is that you've got 3 plus signs, let's say, and 8 negative signs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, -1 plus 1 cancels to be 0. It's a 0 pair, 0 pair, 0 pair. What I'm left with are 5 negatives. I can also demonstrate that on a number line. I would start at positive 3 and go left 8, and I land at -5. Basically, A minus B is the same thing as A plus the opposite of B. All right, some more examples. If you like to rewrite this as 7 plus a -10, you then subtract the two numbers. 10 minus 7 is 3. Keep the sign of the number with the larger absolute value, which would be this one, so it's a -3. If you want a visual, you're at positive 7, going left 10, and you're landing at -3. For B, -3, you would change this to adding the opposite. So -3 plus 12 is really just 12 minus 3, which is 9. And lastly, I'm substituting -11 for x, and now I have a -11 plus a -22. And that sum would be -33. Add the two negatives, keep it negative. Last one is a word problem. An iceberg extends 75 feet above the sea. The bottom of the iceberg is at an elevation of -247 feet. What is the height of the iceberg? So we have to find the difference in elevations. So the top elevation minus the bottom elevation. The minus the negative really makes this addition. So we really land at 322 total feet difference in the height at the top of the elevation all the way to below sea level elevation. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you very much for listening.